Welcome to Common Man Cocktails. I'm your host, Derek Schomer, and this is one of these private little cocktail creation videos. It's just me. I'm recording this, and I'm going to release it on the same day, so this is Sunday. And I didn't have a video for today. I was supposed to use yesterday's Angostura rum video for today, and I screwed up, so I got to put something out for you guys. So I figured I'd continue the march through the cocktail creation series. So we covered a very basic cocktail creation series, which I'll link below and should be in a playlist by now, because once I have two, I can put it in a playlist. This time what I want to do is be able to focus a little bit more on cocktail creation and understanding maybe some of the foundations of cocktail creation, maybe a little bit of history, and some research I was doing on top of just kind of, I feel like if you grasp the basic foundation of how some of the original cocktails were designed and created, you might be able to design your own a little bit better, because you'll understand how to leverage some of the uses and what has been done in the past to create your own cocktail. So we get a lot of people asking, oh, how do I create this cocktail? I can't figure out how to do this. It's too intimidating, yada, yada, yada. Some of the things to pay attention to are the style of cocktails you're going to create. So if you want to create a cocktail for the show as a submission or for friends or parties, things you want to look at: are you going for more of a classic cocktail look and feel? Maybe something that you're going to put in a little 3-ounce coupe glass. Are you going for a tiki theme, something that's got lots of juices and sugars and flavorful, rums and stuff like that? Or is there something in between? Maybe it's more of an 80s style. Maybe something with vodka. Where does it fall? Are you looking to recreate some sort of classic creation that you deem as classic, really being something that's before you were born, but not necessarily true to the traditional classic? The traditional classic cocktail is alcohol, sugar, and bitters. Kind of boring, right? So you're looking at, let's say, for an alcohol, we're going to pick a bourbon, because darker whiskeys, thinking America here, I know Europe, there's going to be a little slight difference between the histories because they're different countries, and it was a time where there wasn't no internet. No, information sharing was much different. So if you said, I want to make a whiskey, you could take whiskey with some simple syrup or some gummy syrup, or do I have any, maybe some grenadine or whatnot, and then you're going to add in some bitters, like maybe some Boston bitters or whatever they had at the time, Angostura or whatnot, and that would kind of really be your cocktail. So you're limited a lot, I think, the way I look at it, in what you could create, because you have such a small array, but it was a different time. It was 1887, I think, The Bartender's Guide by Jerry Thomas, or I think it goes by the How to Mix Drinks, was one of the other names for it. So when you're looking at cocktails that fall between like 1887 and the end of Prohibition, 1933, 1934, what you envision as cocktails is going to be a little bit different. One of the key things that you'll find out is that you're not going to see vodka used in any of those. And that was because vodka wasn't here in America. We just didn't know about it. It wasn't something we had. That's not to say people didn't understand that you could take grain and turn it into alcohol. It was that, that was a really European, Russian style thing. Boom. There is where you get and I picked Russian Standard, or no, I didn't. I picked St. Petersburg vodka, because it kind of represented the vodka of the Russian kind of symbolic side of the story. So when you're looking at that, you're going to see not a lot of cocktails from Russia, or not a lot of cocktails using vodka. So if you're trying to create a new cocktail in the vein, in the history, based on something pre-Prohibition and classic, it's not going to have vodka. Gone. So you would take that out of your recipe. You wouldn't even use that at all. If it doesn't matter to you, just don't bill it as, oh, this is pre-Prohibition style. This was based on something I thought of when I was reading a Jerry Thomas book. Probably not going to happen. So the other thing to pay attention to when you're looking at the ingredients, in this may come in a little bit later, is how you go about creating the cocktail. How many ingredients should you use? For instance, there are some folks that say 2-on-1. So you're looking at like 2 ounces of core, 1.5 to 2 ounces of core spirit, which would be your fundamental, what you're going to use as your primary ingredient. So you've chosen, this is going to be your ingredient, this is what you're going to use. Okay, well, what else do you get to play with? Now you're going to have maybe a sweet and a sour or a tart or something like that. So you're kind of playing off of that original core spirit, say gin in this case. You want to say, I want to use a gin, and I want something that's got maybe a little bit of sour mix, or maybe a little bit of lime, and then I'm going to go with maybe a little bit of grenadine or something like that, and you're going to build that cocktail that way. Still kind of following a traditional, easy to understand theme. a great example that I use, and I have, oh, it's agave, I can get it in a minute. So if you take one of these, this is either Partita agave nectar, agave syrup. You could use this agave nectar. This is the one that we sell at Awesome Drinks. It's in a glass bottle. That pairs well with certain things. Let's say tequila. Agave nectar. Where's my tequila? I've got tequila around here someplace. Bam, right? This is an agave-based spirit. 100% de agave. A sweetening agent that has agave. They complement each other. There's your two ingredients. Now, often you might say, well, we need to balance the sweetness with the sour. Let's go with the lime. Boom, you add a little lime in there. Now you want to bring in a new flavor that's not just agave and lime. You want one more solid flavor. Maybe you do some orange liqueur. Boom, you've got yourself a margarita. That's a common mint margarita. And what I did is 2 ounces of tequila, 3/4 of an ounce of everything else. They balance each other out, right? The orange liqueur you can push up or down depending on how much citrus you want. But the two other ingredients kind of play against each other. It's kind of 2-on-1, but you know, they're 2 parts to one. It's 1 part agave and 1 part lime, right? 3/4. So it still has, it ties a couple ingredients, but it doesn't get over craziness. Like, don't think, oh, if I add 10 ingredients, it's gonna be super awesome. Especially when you start playing with something like Jägermeister, which by itself is like 10 flavors, right? Or Fernet Branca with its eucalyptus. Or something that's crazy aggressive like a Frangelico or a Chartreuse, where you're going to be bringing in some really distinct flavors. 10 of those, your face is not going to recognize after like 5 anyway. Long Island iced tea is a little bit different. It's got a lot of different ingredients. I think maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8 if you add sour mix and Coke. But it gives you one solid iced tea flavor. It doesn't give you all those flavors at once. So it's kind of, you know, you got to be careful about how many ingredients you use. So what I do for, say, a harder cocktail, a strong component cocktail that's going to have a very high proof liquor in it. Let's say Basil Hayden. We'll use that as an example. This is like 40%, right? Yeah, 40% alcohol. If this is my primary ingredient, I am creating a cocktail that's going to be super potent where you're probably going to only want to have one, and it might even be so vibrant you're only going to want one, and you're going to throw it in a glass like this, and you're looking at 3 ounces. I would really focus on having, you know, a full 3 ounce drink, which means like 1.5 ounces of core spirit, in this case a whiskey, and then let's say a 1/2 ounce of some other spirit, and maybe some sweetener or a bitter or something like that. But overall, every part of those ingredients is going to come out to about 3 ounces. If you want to use grapefruit juice, you want to use orange juice, whatever it is, it's still 3 ounces, which means when you add orange juice to a drink that's only 3 ounces, the orange juice is probably not going to be the primary component like it would be in, say, a screwdriver. In that case, the orange is going to add the citrus. But you may have been able to get that out of an orange bitter and kept some of the other sweetness out of the orange away. Brought in some simple syrup, some orange bitter, and your primary component. Now you're looking at something much more classic in style. It has your bitter, sugar, alcohol component, yet it still might not have been invented yet, or you could recreate it on your own. Or you add a little bit of rose water. That brings your, like, a floral component, and that kind of plays more into like the David Embry book, which was the fine art of cocktail mixing. So what David did is he created this book in like 1948, I think was the original published date, that defines 2 types of cocktails, aromatics and sours, right? Sour, daiquiri sour, margarita sour. And that's not to say he invented the margarita, but that style of drink that tends to be on the sour side. We typically I see sour, sweet, and aromatics. You don't, aromatics being like vermouths and things that have a big bouquet to them and lots of like robust flavor. Then you have more of the sweeter drinks. Maybe it's a tiki drink, something like that. Then you have your sours. So then there's tart. You're bringing like Campari or something. So there's a little more to me on the characteristics, defining those shades of gray a little bit differently. But it's a good start, right? And it was published in 1948. I wasn't even born, so mad respect for somebody who can come up with this before any of these probably even existed. That might not be true, but I know Chartreuse and some of those are around. So then the other thing he did was he said, okay, you've got a base ingredient. So our base ingredient, let's pick a base. Let's not take vodka. Let's take my base here. I guess we'll use our tequila. No, you know what? Tequila's a little crazy. Let's go with a single malt bourbon. Base. Now you have your base. Now you're looking for a modifying agent. This could be fruit juices. This could be bitters. This could be, what's a good, maybe you're looking at cocoa real. I don't know about coconut in bourbon. This is where you're gonna make a call and be like, I don't know about that. But this could be your modifying agent. It adds some texture to it, definite texture. It adds sweetness, it adds colors. It does a whole lot of stuff. You might go a little less crazy, maybe the agave nectar, maybe some grenadine. Those would pair, right? And you go that direction. But it could also be something more like a chartreuse. So you could do a bourbon as your primary, a chartreuse as a secondary, as a flavor additive. It's bringing another flavor to the table, but it's not being the drink. You're not drinking straight chartreuse. And then you can bring in a special flavoring agent, color. Let's say, in this case, it wouldn't really work out, but blue curacao to get that blue color, or the grenadine to get the red color, or get a vibrant, like sunset look and feel to specific drinks. Or again, rosewater, bitters, maybe like an Irish cream, but that might be a little crazy at this level because it's still kind of high proof and has that potency. When I look at that third tier ingredient, I look at something that's either sweet or sour but not alcoholic. Pomegranate juice, something like that. The last episode we really covered juices a lot more, so I didn't bother bringing any of those for this. But that gives you syrups and stuff like that to play with in that direction. In this, if you're going to create a cocktail for the first time, this is a good deciding way of doing it. This is a good way of structuring your thought process. Think 3 ingredients and tailor it to that. Sure, you could bring in other stuff, but you're just overcomplicating things. You can build a lot of stuff with 3 ingredients that's going to be awesome. Of course, all the bitters are at awesomedrinks.com if you want them. But let's say you wanted to go with the chamomile, the Boston bitters, and then you're going to bring in some bourbon and maybe a little bit of chartreuse. Now you can start playing with those ratios again. Maybe it's going to be like an ounce and a half of this, a half ounce of this, and a little bit of bitters. Done. Maybe you look at it and go, oh, the drink's missing some other depth. Maybe we'll bring in a little bit of orange liqueur for that orange peel. Maybe a hint of vanilla to make that feel like it's more of an oak, like a over oaked flavor. You know, start thinking out of the box on some of the other things because you're gonna find a lot more creativity comes from just free thinking. So Embry also defined 6 basic cocktails. So you could just create all these if you haven't already. The daiquiri, the Jack Rose, Manhattan Martini, Old Fashioned, and the sidecar, right? So you get cognacs and you've got your whiskeys and stuff like that. A lot more darker ingredients. The other thing to note, until the 1980s, when somebody was creating a cocktail and it was a martini, it was going to be using a gin. That was what everybody used back in the day. So if you're looking to create a spirit that's clear, like a more floral or more clear spirit, not a dark brown, not a whiskey scotch, think gin. Now, if you want to move into the 80s and you're creating something a little bit more toned towards the 80s, let's say you're having an 80s party. If you were to create cocktails for an 80s party, I would suggest sticking away from gin and going more towards the vodka because vodka became a bigger thing in the 80s. That's not to say it didn't exist here. Vodka existed even like in 1905, but that was, and from what I understand from reading, it was first brought to New Hampshire, where we are, in a cocktail that's apparently not named and goes unrecognized by the bartender that brought it here. But what happened is in Prohibition time in the U.S., bartenders needed to get a job. They get exiled to another country, right? If you want to still be able to tend bar, you need to go someplace where alcohol is legal or work at a speakeasy, and there's potential of being arrested. So when they migrate over to Europe and they start doing, you know, their craft over there, guess what? They have a lot more vodka there, especially when you get near Poland or anywhere around, you know, the Russian area. Now they start working with vodka. When they come back after Prohibition, they've got vodka now to think about as part of their ingredient. A lot of people don't really care for vodka. A lot of classy people like it doesn't bring anything. It's got, this has like no flavor. This has the flavor of juniper or chamomile or orange peel or different herbs and different spices that can come with it. So it's more versatile. So be it. If you're going to make an 80s cocktail, it's probably going to be something more with a vodka. But again, it doesn't mean we didn't know what vodka was. We just didn't really use it the same way. We didn't build it into a cocktail like we do today. So when you start shuffling through different recipes to come up with, and you're thinking themed, try and stick to something that fits the vertical of time because it'll be cool. The other thing to consider is the textures, right? If, like I've been doing, is having to create Cool Swan recipes for Cool Swan. And the problem with creating Cool Swan recipes is Cool Swan has a thick texture to it. It's cream, which limits some of the ingredients. This works well. Creme de menthe works well. Bourbon, kind of weird. It's already kind of got Irish whiskey in it. you start to fail on some of the things you can use because the casein starts to mix with acidity. So when you bring in a more acidic, let's say chartreuse, I don't know how acidic that is. If it brings down the pH enough, it's going to cause the casein to clump, curdle, and you're going to end up with something that has a very weird texture. If you add a little bit, it could make silky smoothness. I know when I brought in sloe gin, it really starts to coat the glass. It's hard to get the white off. So it is kind of building into a different texture, but it's not cool. It's not turning into a curdle. So you can still play. Add too much, brings down, if you add that pH, if the pH drops down too far, boom, you're going to have a problem. So it can be tough to work with cream-based recipes, but it could also be fun if you start to bring in some sweeteners. I found a lot more sweetener recipes work with Cool Swan, grenadines, mints, liqueurs in that way, staying away from the lemons and the citruses and the limes. The other thing you could do, and this is a little bit newer age, is there's the Capella flavor drops is a great example. So this is banana, this is sweet strawberry, and this is bubblegum. So let's just say you wanted to create a cocktail with Cool Swan that's going to have a bubblegum appeal to it. This doesn't have any sugar, so you're going to need to bring some sweetener to it. So Cool Swan, maybe some grenadine, a little bit of bubblegum. The grenadine is not only going to add sweetness, but it's going to give a pink rose color to it. It's going to make it appear the color of bubblegum. So you can end up with a bubblegum by bringing in this flavor agent. Again, you still have your three spirits. You followed all the rules of more of a classic early 1900s style, but you did it with newer ingredients, and it's going to be nothing like they would have had back then, but still yet cool. So think about stuff like that, and a lot of the times, it's just getting some of the ingredients, which is why, although I can't sell spirits, I could sell some of these things, like the rose waters, the hibiscus waters, the jasmines. We have all those in the store. I don't have Capella flavor drops, though. And the grenadines, we have those in the store. And the bitters, we have those in the store. And the reason being, you can start to expand and build out of a lot of this stuff. It doesn't mean you just have to take orange juice and amaretto and bring them together. The other thing you can do is you want to add that texture. Texture also comes in the form of carbonation. Boom, you can get a soda stream. Or buy carbonated tonic waters and seltzer waters and flavor waters, Fruit 2.0, things like that, and start to bring some of those in. Just bringing in water might be boring, but if you could spring it up a little bit with some zing, maybe gin with a little bit of a flavored water, like a cranberry flavored water or something like that, can make it a little lighter, maybe a little bit more poolside, but still keep some of that gin in there. Water and Cool Swan, not necessarily going to work well, but think about it from that direction. The next thing you need to do will be to exercise on pairing. And some of this is going to be, I'll save that for maybe another video, but when you, egg white, by the way, also fits into these texturing ingredients, the modifying agent. Not everything's going to work together. And people are like, well, will these things work together? Don't ask me, just do it. Do it, try it and see. You'll gain more experience that way. You'll find out that lemon and Cool Swan don't really make a great pairing. But a lot of it you can kind of visualize. The bitters are going to be easier because they can kind of go with anything. But let's say you're going to take, cream of coconut. You're going to want to bring it into gin. Is that going to work? When I envision like the flavors of gin and some of the juniper flavors against the coconut, I don't see it. That doesn't mean it's not going to be good. Even Kurd said, he was on the show. He's like, I got to rethink my cocktail creation because some of the things we created just at that week that he was here didn't make any sense, but they worked. So if you follow some of the rules to cocktail creation that have existed and you kind of riff off of the ones that are already there, you're probably going to have a lot more success. Yet you can still go out of the box and get creative, and sometimes you're going to get a winner that nobody would have ever thought, and you'll end up being the genius. So it depends on how much risk and how much waste you want to go through, because you will start burning through some of the ingredients. I think that's a good foundation for today on some things to think about. Also, don't forget about bringing in the herbs, maybe muddled mint, sage, anything around that kind of herbal thing, or some fruits, and muddling them in, strawberries, watermelons, stuff like that. All of those can play a part. They all bring some water. You can take some lime. Water really accents and brings out the aroma of a drink. So don't think not using water or tonic or something like that is, there's some great justifications for doing that. And the carbonation can help bring out that aroma, really change up your drink. If you look at tiki, you're going to look at some of the tiki recipes, the Mai Tais, the Suffering Bastards, and start subbing out some of the ingredients. Even the Common Man Margarita, like I said, it has those key ingredients. If I take my agave nectar out and I replace it with pomegranate or falernum, and then I take out my lime and I replace it with a lemon or grapefruit, and I take out my tequila and I replace it with, I don't know, no, that's boring. I don't know, let's say a flavored rum. You know, let's see, we got key lime rum. You know, maybe you can just sub out those, keep the proportions the same, and see what happens. You don't have to keep changing proportions. You'll see if you go through my created recipe lists that a lot of them have the same proportions. They're just completely different ingredients. There's a formula. Stick to the formula that works for you and sub in different ingredients, and you're going to find a lot more success that way, because you don't have to keep balancing ratios. Things will just kind of fall into place and work like Jenga. Dude, that's it. Question of the day: what's your favorite modifying agent? Grenadine, bitters, rose waters, or aromatic waters, flavor drops. Get creative. What do you think? What is your favorite flavoring agent that you find that you use the most in drinks? We're done. EverydayDrinkers.com. You'll soon be able to see us, hopefully, on Roku. I've got my prototype working. Also, let me know if you guys have a Roku. I'd love to know that information. Otherwise, I think we're done here. Check out Awesome Drinks for some of the bitters and cool waters. We're done. We're teaching how to drink.